The boarding line froze as the flight attendant's voice sliced through the terminal. "Step aside. You don't belong in first class." Dozens of passengers watched as a young black woman stood calmly, her ticket held out, then ripped apart in front of her. Gasps filled the gate. Whispers followed. Shame was the point. What no one knew was that this humiliation was being carefully observed. Every word, every gesture, every violation. Because the woman being expelled wasn't powerless. She was trained to notice patterns. She was authorized to write reports that ground planes end careers and dismantle entire systems. And in a few minutes, the balance of power would shift violently publicly and forever. The air in Terminal 4 of Los Angeles International Airport was thick with a familiar blend of Cinnabon sugar floor wax and human anxiety. It was 6:05 a.m., but the terminal was already a frantic river of people. Chloe Davis navigated the current with practiced ease, her carry-on, a simple regulationized black roller gliding silently behind her. To anyone who bothered to look, Chloe was thoroughly unremarkable. She wore a grey Stanford University sweatshirt, comfortable black joggers, and a pair of well-worn running shoes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple, neat bun. At 29, she could have easily passed for a graduate student heading home for a break. This anonymity was her greatest professional asset. Chloe wasn't a student. She was Dr. Chloe Davis, a senior compliance and investigations officer for the Federal Aviation Administration. Her field wasn't engineering or air traffic control. It was human factors. Specifically, she was the head of a new highly feared internal audit team specializing in discrimination, passenger rights, and Air Carrier Access Act ACA compliance. Today, she was flying Trans-American Airways Flight 112 from LAX to JFK. It was supposed to be a simple observation flight. She was deadheading to a conference in New York, but for Chloe, there was no such thing as off the clock. Every interaction was data. She arrived at Gate 48B. The flight was already in a state of chaotic pre-boarding. The gate area was a mess of families, business travelers, and a bachelorette party already 3 mimosas deep. Presiding over this chaos, standing at the podium with an air of profound boredom and irritation, was the lead flight attendant. Her name tag pinned aggressively to her crisp white blouse read Karen. Chloe knew the type instantly. Karen Foster, mid-40s, immaculate blonde hair, sprayed into a helmet makeup applied with surgical precision. She held her passenger manifest like a royal decree. She was scanning the crowd, her eyes lingering with judgment on anyone who didn't fit her narrow worldview. Chloe watched as Karen snapped at an elderly man fumbling for his passport. "Sir, this isn't a library. Have your documents ready? You're holding up the line." She then turned on a young mother, Jessica, who was struggling with a stroller and a crying toddler. "That stroller must be gate-checked," Karen snapped. Though the stroller was clearly a compact collapsible model approved for overhead bins. "I don't care what the website said. I'm the final authority here." Chloe made a mental note. FAA Code 14, Part 382. Failure to reasonably accommodate passengers with small children. The gate agent, a younger woman named Sarah, looked mortified but utterly powerless. Karen was clearly the one in charge, and she reveled in it. Then the pre-boarding call for first class began. Chloe, whose ticket was a full, fare, first-class seat paid for by the US government, moved forward, joining the short line. Karen's eyes, as sharp and cold as ice picks, landed on her immediately. She scanned Chloe from her sneakers to her sweatshirt, and a tiny, satisfied sneer formed on her lips. When Chloe reached the podium, Karen put a perfectly manicidal hand-up palm out. "Hold on, this line is for first class and priority members only." Her voice was just loud enough for the first few rows of passengers to hear. "Good morning," Chloe said, her voice calm and pleasant. She held up her phone, the QR code for her boarding pass glowing. "I'm in seat 2A. Karen didn't even look at the phone. Her eyes narrowed. "I'm sure you think you are, honey. The economy boarding group hasn't been called. You need to step aside." "I'm not in economy," Chloe repeated, still pleasant, but with a new edge of firmness. "I am in first class seat 2A. If you'd like to scan my pass." I don't need to scan anything, Karen interrupted. The passengers behind Chloe were starting to sigh and shift. I can see from here you're in the wrong place. Now please move. You're blocking my real first-class passengers. An older gentleman behind Chloe Mark spoke up for crying out loud. Just scan her pass. We'd all like to get on the plane. Karen shot him a venomous look before turning her attention back to Chloe. She was being challenged, and she hated it. This young woman in her college sweatshirt was defying her. "Mom," Chloe said, her voice dropping the pleasantries. It was now flat professional. "You are legally required to scan my boarding pass and allow me to board, or you must provide me with a valid, non-discriminatory reason for denial of boarding." The legalistic phrase hit Karen like a slap. "Excuse me. Who do you think you are? I'm a passenger," Chloe said, in seat 2A. "Scan the pass." Seething, Karen snatched the phone from Chloe's hand, jamming it under the scanner with unnecessary force. Beep. The screen flashed. Davis Chloe, seat 2A, Group 1. Karen's face for a split second registered shock. It was immediately replaced by a flush of dark, furious red. She had been wrong, and she had been corrected publicly. She practically threw the phone back at Chloe. Fine," she hissed, her voice a low whisper of pure venom. "Enjoy the free drinks. I'm sure you will." Chloe picked up her phone. She met Karen's eyes, her gaze unblinking. "Thank you." "I will." She turned and walked down the jet bridge, her back straight. She could feel Karen's hateful stare burning into her sweatshirt. She wasn't just a passenger to Karen anymore. She was a problem. As she stepped onto the aircraft, she mentally added to her report: gate procedure violation, hostile employee behavior, clear profiling potential for escalation. She had no idea how right she was. The incident at the podium wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Chloe settled into seat 2A, a spacious pod by the window. She took a deep breath, trying to compartmentalize. She was an inspector, yes, but she was also a human being who had just been profiled and humiliated. The sting of it was sharp. Karen's implication was clear. You don't belong here. You're a scammer. She pulled out her laptop, intending to work, but her focus was fractured. She watched the remaining passengers board. She saw Karen at the aircraft door greeting white passengers with a dazzling plastic smile, and nodding curtly at passengers of color. The young Mother Jessica finally boarded, flustered and tear-streaked, having been forced to check her stroller. Chloe watched Karen watch her, a look of smug satisfaction on her face. Chloe began typing not her presentation for the conference, but a new encrypted file. She documented the time, the gate, the flight number, and FA Karen Foster. She detailed the entire encounter using the precise, unemotional language of a federal report. 10 minutes later, the cabin door was about to close when Chloe realized she'd left her noise-cancelling headphones in her roller bag, which was in the overhead bin directly above her seat. She unbuckled, stood up, and opened the bin. Instantly, a voice barked from the galley. "Mom, sit down. The cabin door is closing." It was Karen. "I'm just getting something from my bag. It will take 5 seconds," Chloe said, calmly reaching inside. "I gave you an instruction." "Sit down," Karen commanded, marching down the aisle. "We cannot delay this flight for you to rifle through your things. This isn't a city bus." Chloe retrieved her headphones and closed the bin, turning to face the flight attendant. "The door is not yet closed and the fastened seatbelt sign is not yet illuminated. I am permitted to be out of my seat." Karen's eyes flashed with a dangerous, almost unhinged light. This was the second time Chloe had calmly and correctly cited procedure. To Karen, this wasn't just a disagreement. It was an act of rebellion. "I am the lead flight attendant on this aircraft." Karen said, her voice low and menacing. "My word is law here. When I tell you to sit, you sit." "What is in your bag that is so important anyway? Are you stealing something?" The accusation was so absurd, so blatantly malicious that Chloe was momentarily stunned. "Stealing from my own bag. I don't know what's in there," Karen snapped. "You've been a problem since the gate. You're aggressive, you're non-compliant, and you're making other passengers nervous. This was a classic manipulation tactic. Create the problem, then blame the victim. Chloe looked around. The other first-class passengers were staring, most just wanting to avoid the conflict. The man from the gate mark was in seat 3C. He was watching intently, his brow furrowed in disapproval. "I am not aggressive," Chloe said, her voice like steel. "I am sitting in the seat I paid for, and I retrieved an item from my bag. You are the one creating a scene. Now, if you'll excuse me," she made to step around Karen back to her seat. Karen blocked her path. "No, I don't feel safe with you on my flight. You have an attitude problem." "An attitude problem." Chloe repeated the words, tasting like ash. "And what does an attitude problem look like to you, Karen? Does it by any chance look like me?" The challenge hung in the air, thick and toxic. Karen knew exactly what she meant, and it pushed her over the edge. "That's it," Karen snarled. "You're off this flight. You just threatened me." "I did no such thing," Chloe stated, incredulous. "I asked you a question. I heard what you implied." "You're trying to intimidate me. You're one of those people always looking for a handout, always looking to play the victim." She grabbed Chloe's arm. "Get your bag. You're getting off." Chloe pulled her arm free, her entire demeanor shifting. The passenger persona dissolved, replaced by the cold authority of a federal officer. "Do not ever put your hands on me again," Chloe said, her voice lethal. Her tone, the sudden, absolute shift in power, made Karen recoil. But she had gone too far to back down. Her ego was at stake. She looked past Chloe to the cockpit. The door was open. The captain was visible doing his pre-flight checks. "Captain Price?" Karen yelled, her voice trembling with manufactured hysteria. "This passenger is unstable. She threatened me and is refusing to sit. I need her removed." Captain Price, a veteran pilot named David Price, looked back, his face a mask of annoyance. The last thing he wanted was a delay. He unbuckled and started to move toward the cabin. "What's the problem here?" he asked, his voice a low grumble. "This passenger," Karen said, pointing at Chloe, "is non-compliant. She's been argumentative since the gate, and she just threatened me. I want her removed for the safety of the crew." Captain Price looked at Chloe. He saw a young woman in a sweatshirt who looked more tired than threatening. He looked at Karen, whose face was a mask of theatrical fear. He sighed. "Mom, just take your seat. We're about to push back," he said to Chloe. "I'm happy to," Captain Chloe said. "But your lead attendant has accused me of threatening her, which I did not, and is now attempting to have me illegally removed from this flight. It's my word against hers." Captain Karen jumped in, "And I am your lead. FA, are you going to believe me or her?" The captain was trapped. Siding against his crew, right or wrong, was a procedural nightmare. Mars Foster, Chloe said, turning her full attention to Karen. "You are making a very serious mistake. I am advising you as a final courtesy to return to your station and prepare the cabin for departure." "Advising me? You don't advise me?" Karen shrieked. The facade of professionalism was completely gone. She was now just a cornered animal lashing out. "You're done. You're done." She looked at the captain. "Get her off. If she stays, I'm not flying. It's her or me." The captain scrubbed his face with his hand. This was a delay. This was paperwork. This was a nightmare. "Fine," he grumbled. He looked at Chloe. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I have to ask you to deplane. We'll get you on the next flight." Chloe nodded slowly. "I understand, Captain. You're making a choice based on your crew's report." She turned, opened the overhead bin, and calmly retrieved her roller bag. Karen's face was a triumphant, ugly mask. She had won. She had exerted her power and vanquished the woman who didn't belong. As Chloe walked toward the open aircraft door, Karen followed her as if to escort her off. "Have a nice walk back to the terminal." She sneered just loud enough for Chloe to hear. Chloe stopped on the jet bridge. She turned to face Karen, who was standing just inside the aircraft door, framed like a conquering hero. The gate agent Sarah was at the other end, her hand over her mouth. Karen, Chloe said, her voice echoing in the metal tube. I need to see your boarding pass again. Karen laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. My boarding pass. I work here, you idiot. No, Chloe said, stepping closer. My boarding pass. The one you scanned at the gate. I need it back. I don't have your pass. Karen said you have your phone now. Get off the jet bridge before I call security. Actually, Chloe said, you scanned my phone, but I also have a paper copy. I printed it at the kiosk. When you were accusing me of being in the wrong line, I pulled it out. You didn't see it. It's in my pocket. This was a lie, a test, a trap. Karen's eyes flickered. She didn't remember a paper ticket. Oh, Chloe continued. Or maybe you did see it. Maybe I handed it to you. She was baiting her, but Karen was too enraged, too high on her own victory to see it. I don't know what you're talking about, Karen snapped. You're delusional. Now get out. Okay, Chloe said. Let's try this one more time. I'm going to step back onto this aircraft. I'm going to walk to seat 2A, and you are going to return to your duties. If you attempt to stop me, you will be committing a federal crime. A federal crime. Karen shrieked, laughing. You are trespassing. You've been ordered to deplane. I have been unlawfully ordered to deplane, Chloe corrected, and I am now declining. She took one step toward the plane, and that's when Karen snapped. She lunged past the doorway onto the jet bridge. You are not getting back on this plane. She grabbed for Chloe's bag. Chloe moved it out of her reach. Give me your bag. No. You want to play games? Fine, Karen screamed. She saw the paper boarding pass sticking partially out of Chloe's sweatshirt pocket. In a single vicious movement, she snatched it. You want your ticket? She screamed. Her face was purple with rage. Here's your ticket. She tore the boarding pass in half. She tore it into quarters. She tore it into A's. She threw the handful of confetti onto the floor of the jet bridge. Now you don't have a ticket, she hissed, her chest heaving. Problem solved? Get out of my sight. The jet bridge was silent, save for the distant whine of a turbine. Chloe Davis looked down at the shredded pieces of her ticket. She looked up at Karen Foster, whose eyes were glittering with triumphant malice. Then Chloe smiled. A small, cold, terrifying smile. Thank you, Karen, she said, her voice a perfect calm whisper. You have no idea what you've just done. The silence on the jet bridge was absolute. Karen's breath was still ragged from her outburst, her triumphant sneer just beginning to curdle into confusion. Chloe's smile, so devoid of fear and so full of something else, was deeply unsettling. What did you say? Karen stammered. Chloe slowly knelt. With meticulous care, she began picking up the torn pieces of her boarding pass. I said thank you. You've just made my job infinitely easier. Your job. Karen scoffed, though a tremor of uncertainty had entered her voice. Your job is to get off this jet bridge, you lunatic. Chloe stood up the scraps of paper in her palm. My job, she said, pulling her wallet from her back pocket, is to ensure that people like you don't get to endanger the flying public. She didn't open her wallet to her driver's license. She flipped it to the other side. There, embedded in fine black leather, was a gleaming gold and blue medallion, the official seal of the Federal Aviation Administration. Beside it, her credentials laminated and bearing the unmistakable authority of the United States government. My name is Dr. Chloe Davis, she said, her voice clear cold and amplified by the metal tube. It carried back into the aircraft, where Captain Price and the first row passengers were staring wide-eyed. It carried out to the gate, where Sarah the gate agent was frozen. I am a senior compliance and investigations officer for the FAA badge number 774B. She held the credentials up inches from Karen's face. Karen's entire body went rigid. The color drained from her face, leaving a pasty grey mask of her recent fury. Her eyes darted from the batch to Chloe's face, her brain struggling to reconcile the woman in the Stanford sweatshirt with the federal officer now standing before her. No, Karen whispered. You're lying. That's a fake. I assure you, Miss Foster, Chloe said. "It is not, and you are in a catastrophic amount of trouble." Chloe turned from Karen and addressed the shell-shocked gate agent. "Sarah, get on the phone. I need your station manager, Robert Henderson, and the head of airport security at this gate in 2 minutes. Tell them it is an active FAA investigation. Go now." Sarah jolted into action. By Chloe's absolute command, fumbled for her phone and began dialing, her voice shaking. Chloe then turned to the cockpit. "Captain Price, you will hold this aircraft at the gate. Do not close that door. Do not communicate with dispatch. You are now part of a federal incident inquiry. Do you understand me?" Captain Price, a man who had flown F-18s in the Gulf War, suddenly looked like a rookie. He'd been trained for engine fires, for hijackings, for bird strikes. He had never been trained for this. He gave a single jerky nod. "Yes, Mom. Understood." Finally, Chloe turned back to Karen. The flight attendant was shaking her manicured hands, clutching her own arms. The power, the arrogance, the rage, it had all evaporated, leaving a quivering, terrified woman in its place. You can't," Karen sputtered. It was a misunderstanding. I was stressed. You were non-compliant." Miss Foster, Chloe interrupted her voice, cutting through the excuses. "Please stop talking. Anything you say can and will be used in my official report to the FAA, the Department of Transportation, and potentially the Department of Justice." She enumerated the violations on her fingers. "1, you profiled me at the gate, a clear violation of ACA anti-discrimination policies. 2, you attempted to deny me boarding without a valid safety-related reason. 3, you created a hostile environment for multiple passengers, including myself and Mrs. Jessica Miller and her child. 4, you lied to your captain, claiming I threatened you in an attempt to have me illegally removed. That Miss Foster is interference with a crew member, a federal offense. 5, you put your hands on me. That is assault. And 6, she held up the handful of shredded paper. You deliberately destroyed my legal travel document in an act of malice. You have in 10 minutes single-handedly violated more federal codes than I've seen in a year." Karen made a small choking sound. I'll be fired." "Oh, Chloe," said, her voice devoid of any pity. "You're so far beyond fired. Fired is what happens when you steal too many mini bottles of wine. You are facing a lifetime revocation of your FA credentials, crippling personal fines from the FAA, and depending on what the US Attorney's Office decides, criminal charges." The wail of a radio crackled. 2 airport police officers, their hands on their belts, came jogging down the jet bridge, followed by a portly man in a suit, sweating and panting. This was Robert Henderson, the Trans-American station manager. "What's going on?" Henderson demanded, looking at the scene. "We got a call about an FAA." "Oh?" He saw Chloe. He saw her badge. His entire demeanor collapsed. "Officer Davis," he said, forcing a calm he did not feel. "I'm Robert Henderson. I'm the station manager. What seems to be the problem?" "The problem, Mr. Henderson," Chloe said, "is your lead flight attendant, Miss Karen Foster. She has just assaulted me and destroyed my travel documents after attempting to illegally deny me boarding based on my race." Henderson's face went white. This was a nuclear scenario. "Karen?" he whispered, turning to his employee. Karen just stared at him. Tears of terror now streaming down her face, carving paths through her foundation. She trapped me. She didn't say who she was." "I am not required to Miss Foster," Chloe said coldly. "My job is to observe the authentic passenger experience. You have provided a masterclass." She turned to the police officers. "Officers, I need you to detain Ms. Foster. She is not under arrest, but she is not free to leave. She needs to be escorted to the station manager's office, where she will wait for me. Please secure her company ID and her side badge." The officers, looking grim, stepped onto the jet bridge. "Ma'am, please come with us." Karen, now sobbing openly, didn't move. "No, please. I have a mortgage. I have a cat. It was a mistake. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." She looked at Chloe, her eyes pleading. "Please don't do this. I'll get you another ticket. I'll upgrade you. I'll pay for your ticket. Chloe just looked at her, her expression unreadable. This is not about a ticket, Karen. This is about the law. You broke it. Take her away, officers. As the police gently but firmly took Karen by the arms and escorted her off the jet bridge, her wails echoed through the terminal. I didn't mean it. I'm not a racist. I'm not. Please. The passengers on the plane who had heard everything were in stunned silence. Chloe turned to the horrified station manager. Mr. Henderson, this flight is now a crime scene. No one is deplaning. No one is boarding. You will ground this aircraft. Get me a new crew and a new lead FA. I will be taking formal sworn statements from Captain Price and the other flight attendants. I will also be interviewing passengers. And you, she said, pointing to Sarah, the gate agent, you are coming with me. You're a material witness. She then pointed to the man in 3C. Sir Mark, you witnessed the incident at the gate as well. I'd like your name and number. You'll be hearing from my office. Mark nodded grimly. Happy to help, officer. What she did, it was disgusting. Chloe finally looked at Mr. Henderson. Get your regional vice president on the phone. Get your head of corporate legal on the phone. You have 1 hour to meet me in your office, and you will bring me Ms. Foster's complete unredacted employee file. Am I clear? Crystal Officer Davis Henderson squeaked. Chloe turned and walked off the jet bridge, a simple black roller bag gliding silently behind her. She had a long day of paperwork ahead, but the flight to New York could wait. She had just grounded an entire Airbus A321 and she was just getting started. The Trans-American Airways station office at LAX was a drab, windowless room that smelled of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. It was now 7:30 a.m. In a glass-walled conference room, Chloe Davis sat at the head of a long table. She had swapped her sweatshirt for the crisp button-down shirt she'd packed in her carry-on. The transformation was complete. She was no longer a grad student. She was the government. Across from her sat a visibly sweating Robert Henderson. To his left on a large video conference screen, 2 grim-faced men in expensive suits stared back. They were Robert Strickland, the VP of West Coast Operations, and Martin Shaw, the airline's chief legal counsel. On a separate chair in the corner sat Sarah the gate agent, clutching a bottle of water. Captain David Price had already been interviewed, given his statement, which largely corroborated Chloe's account of the in-flight incident, and been dismissed to manage his furious delayed passengers. Karen Foster was in another office down the hall with a stoic airport police officer and a bewildered union representative who had been dragged out of bed. Let's be very clear about what is happening. Chloe began, her voice resonating with cold authority. She had the shredded pieces of her ticket arranged neatly on the table next to her FAA credentials. As of 06:45, Pacific Time Trans-American Airways is under formal investigation for multiple flagrant violations of the Air Carrier Access Act and several sections of the Code of Federal Regulations. On the screen, Martin Shaw, the lawyer, leaned forward. Officer Davis, first let me express the airline's profound apologies for the unprofessional conduct of one employee. I assure you Ms. Foster's actions do not reflect our corporate values. She has been suspended effective immediately pending termination. Duly noted, Chloe said flatly. But your problem is much bigger than one employee. This wasn't just unprofessional conduct. This was a systemic failure. She gestured to Robert Henderson. Mr. Henderson, you provided me with Ms. Foster's employee file as requested. She held up a thin manila folder. It's remarkably light. According to this, in her 12 years of service, Miss Foster has a perfect record. Not a single complaint. Not one. Henderson nodded weakly. Karen was one of our most senior attendants. Very efficient. Efficient, Chloe repeated. An interesting word. She then turned her attention to the gate agent. Sarah, you were present at the gate. You witnessed Ms. Foster's initial confrontation with me. Sarah, who had been trembling, suddenly sat up straight. She looked at her boss, Mr. Henderson, then at the executives on the screen, and finally at Chloe. She took a deep breath. Yes, Mom, I saw it all. And in your opinion, Sarah, Chloe asked. Was Miss Foster's behavior normal? Sarah hesitated. She was a low-level gate agent. These were the men who signed her paychecks. Sarah, Chloe said, her voice softening slightly. You are a material witness in a federal investigation. Lying or obfuscating to protect your employer is obstruction of justice. I need the truth. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was firm. It wasn't normal, but it was Karen. She's always like that. The executive stiffened. Henderson looked like he was going to be sick. Please elaborate, Chloe said, pressing her advantage. She hates the LAX JFK route. Sarah explained, the words tumbling out. She calls it the ghetto bird. She always profiles passengers, especially black passengers in first class. She'll accidentally spill drinks on them. She'll lose their meal preferences. She'll write them up for being non-compliant if they ask for a second blanket. And you've witnessed this behavior before? Yes, Sarah whispered. Many times. And did you ever report it? Yes, Sarah said, her voice rising. I did twice. I filed 2 internal complaints with Mr. Henderson last month. She made a disabled veteran wait for 30 minutes for a wheelchair assist because she said he was faking it to get on first. I filed a report, and 3 months ago, she refused to let a passenger use the first-class lavatory, a black man, even though he was seated in 3A. She claimed he looked suspicious. I filed a report on that too. Chloe turned her gaze as cold as a glacier on the station manager. Mr. Henderson, Chloe said, I have Ms. Foster's file. There are no reports here. Robert Henderson slumped. He knew he was caught. I handled them internally. I spoke with Karen. I didn't want her to put a black mark on the file of a senior attendant over personality conflicts. Personality conflicts. Chloe repeated, her voice dripping with contempt. You mistook systemic illegal discrimination for a personality conflict. You received formal notice of ACA violations, and you buried them. On the screen, Martin Shaw, the lawyer, put his head in his hands. He knew what this meant. This wasn't one bad apple anymore. This was corporate negligence. This was a pattern and practice of discrimination, and the station manager had just confessed to covering it up. Mr. Henderson, Chloe said, you just became a co-conspirator. You enabled Ms. Foster. You are just as liable as she is. I was just trying to manage my team, he pleaded. You failed. Chloe snapped. You didn't just fail your passengers. You failed your other employees. You left Sarah here exposed to this, forcing her to work in a hostile environment. Chloe stood up and began to pace. Here is what's going to happen. Trans-American Airways is to immediately turn over all internal complaints filed at the LAX station for the last 24 months. You will turn over all CCTV footage from Gate 48B, from all angles from 5:30 to 0:70. You will provide a full passenger manifest for Flight 112, as I will be contacting more witnesses specifically. She looked at her notes. Mr. Mark Peterson in 3C and Mrs. Jessica Miller in 14B. She looked at the executives on the screen. Mr. Strickland, Mr. Shaw. This is no longer a station-level issue. I am flagging TransAmy for a full fleet-wide FAA audit of your ACA and discrimination complaint handling procedures. My report will recommend the maximum possible fines for every single violation I find, starting with the ones Ms. Foster and Mr. Henderson so kindly gift-wrapped for me today. Officer, please? Sure. Or the lawyer tried to interject. Let's be reasonable. We can settle this. A significant contribution to a charity of your choice. A public apology. We will fire Mr. Henderson today. Right now, Robert, you're done. Henderson let out a small, strangled cry. Chloe laughed, a single, sharp, humorous bark. You think this is a negotiation? You think you can bribe a federal officer, Mr. Shaw? I'd be careful. That sounds a lot like another felony. She walked to the door. My colleagues from the regional office will be here within the hour to begin seizing your servers. I am grounding this terminal's operations until I have your full, unadulterated cooperation. I strongly suggest you give it. As for me, she said, checking her watch, I still have a conference in New York. Please book me on the 10 hours. flight seat 2A, and send a different car. She opened the door and paused, looking back at the ruins of the room. Oh, and Mr. Shaw, tell your CEO to prepare his public statement. This is going to be very, very public. She walked out, leaving silence and the smell of corporate panic in her wake. The next 2 weeks were a blur of coordinated, systematic destruction for Trans-American Airways. Chloe's report, filed within hours of her landing at JFK, was a 40-page masterpiece of professional evisceration. It was cold, factual, and utterly damning. It left no room for interpretation. Trans-American hadn't just allowed a racist employee to run wild. They had actively enabled it through managerial cowardice and corporate indifference. The fallout was immediate and brutal. For Karen Foster, her termination was the least of her worries. The union, after viewing the crystal-clear CCTV footage from Gate 48B, which showed her profiling Chloe, blocking her, and then violently snatching and ripping the ticket, dropped her case. They sent her a own-line letter stating that her actions were indefensible and gross misconduct, voiding their obligation to represent her. She was alone. The FAA, acting on Chloe's report, formally revoked her flight attendant certification for life. She could never work as cabin crew on any US or Allied carrier again. But Chloe wasn't done. Her report was passed to the Department of Justice. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Central District of California took one look at the evidence package: the video, the testimony from Sarah Captain Price and Mark Peterson, and the confession from Henderson, and filed criminal charges. Karen Foster was charged with interference with an aircraft crew member, which ironically her own actions constituted, and a federal hate crime charge under the Civil Rights Act. She was arrested at her home. Her perp walk, broadcast on the local news, showed a woman unrecognizable from the pristine FA. Her hair a mess, her face blotchy and swollen, handcuffed, and being led into a police car. Her life was over for the airline Trans-American. The story leaked just as Chloe had promised. Mark Peterson, the passenger from 3C, was a tech journalist. He didn't just give his statement. He wrote a scathing Firstison blog post titled, "I watched Trans-American let their staff assault a passenger. Then I found out who she was." The post went globally viral. The flight attendant Karen and Trans-American shame trended for 72 straight hours. The company's stock, already fragile, nosedived. It lost 18% of its value, over $800 million in market cap, in 2 days. The FAA, using Chloe's report as a battering ram, hit them with the largest fine in the AY's history for discrimination-related offences, $25 million. But the real hard karma was the consent decree. The FAA didn't just fine them, they took control. Trans-American was forced to enter a 5-year court-monitored agreement. They had to fire their entire West Coast senior management, including VP Robert Strickland. They had to scrap their internal complaint system and replace it with a third-party ethics hotline, monitored directly by an FAA-appointed auditor. And in a final beautiful twist of karmic justice, the FAA had to appoint a new special master to oversee the company's complete cultural retraining. The person chosen for that role, Dr. Chloe Davis. She was now effectively the boss of the entire airline's human resources and compliance divisions. For the others, Robert Henderson, the station manager who buried the complaints, was fired and faced his own charges for obstruction and conspiracy. He lost his pension and was forced to sell his home to pay his legal bills. Sarah, the gate agent who spoke up, was hailed as a whistleblower. As part of the consent decree, she was offered a new senior-level management position in corporate compliance at the Chicago O'Hare hub, with a 50% pay raise and full protection. Captain Price was reprimanded for his poor judgment in siding with his crew over a passenger without a full investigation. He was grounded for 90 days and forced to undergo retraining in de-escalation and passenger rights. He considered it a light sentence. The airline, humbled and hemorrhaging money, issued a gravelling front-page apology in every major newspaper. The CEO, a man named Philip Norton, had to personally call Chloe Davis and apologise. A call she took with professional, icy silence. The message was sent not just to Trans-Am, but to every airline in the sky. The rules are not suggestions, and you never ever know who's watching. 6 months passed. The world, for the most part, moved on. Trans-American Airways was deep in the throes of its painful, expensive, and mandatory cultural rebirth. With Chloe Davis at the helm of the Oversight Committee, she had become one of the most powerful and respected figures in aviation compliance. Karen Foster's trial was a quiet, pathetic affair. Faced with the mountain of video and testimonial evidence, she took a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of interference and 1 count of misdemeanor assault. The hate crime charge was dropped in exchange for her plea. She was sentenced to 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory intensive anger management and racial sensitivity counseling. She was also barred from ever setting foot in LAX airport again. But the real sentence was her new life. She was unemployable. The black mark from the FAA meant no travel-related company would touch her. Her name was toxic. The public humiliation, the viral videos of her shrieking on the jet bridge, had made her a pariah. She lost her condo in Santa Monica. The bank foreclosed on it. She lost her car. Her friends, mostly other flight attendants, abandoned her, fearing the stain of her association. At 46, she was broke, disgraced, and living in a tiny rundown studio apartment in Bakersfield, a city she had once flown 30,000 FT above, dismissing it as flyover country. Her life of perceived power and glamour was gone, replaced by the grim reality of fast food applications and temp agencies that never called back. One crisp Tuesday afternoon, Chloe Davis was at the Trans-American headquarters, a gleaming glass tower in Dallas, for a quarterly review. The meeting had been brutal. She had just finished tearing apart their new training manuals, calling them patronizing fluff and demanding a complete rewrite. The new VP of Operations, a woman named Linda Chen, was walking with her to the elevator. "Dr. to Davis." Linda said, her voice strained. "We are trying. This is a massive ship to turn." "I know you are," Chloe said, not unkindly. "But you're trying to patch a bullet hole with a Band-Aid. You need a new hull. The culture itself is the problem. You're still treating compliance as a punishment, not a principle." "You're right," Linda sighed. I'm not sure how to fix what's broken in people's heads." "You start by holding them accountable," Chloe said, as the elevator chimed every single time. As the elevator doors opened, a woman stepped out. She was wearing a standard, ill-fitting Trans-American pilot's uniform. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe functional bun. She was laughing at something a co-pilot next to her had said. Chloe froze. The woman froze. It was Karen Foster. Not in a hairette, not in a fast food uniform. She was wearing the 4 striped epaulettes of a captain. Karen's eyes, which had been bright with laughter, turned to stone. The blood drained from her face. It was the same look of horrified recognition from the jet bridge. Chloe stared, her mind racing. How is this possible? The FAA revocation was for her flight attendant certification. It didn't or couldn't automatically apply to a pilot's license, which fell under a different set of regulations. "Karen," Chloe breathed. "You?" Karen whispered, her voice filled with a venom so pure it was almost flammable. The co-pilot looked between them, confused. "Captain Foster. This woman, Captain Foster." Linda Chen. The VP looked just as stunned as Chloe. "Karen. What, I thought you were terminated." Karen said, her eyes never leaving Chloe. She was shaking, but this time it wasn't with fear. It was with white-hot consolidated rage. "I was fired as a flight attendant, but I've had my commercial pilot's license for 10 years. I've been flying regionals on the side." When TransAim started its second chance hiring initiative, she shot a nasty look at Linda. "To prove how diverse and forgiving it was, I applied. And your new, unbiased HR computers, the ones you probably had installed, saw a qualified pilot with 4,000 flight hours. They didn't see me. She had slipped through the cracks. The system Chloe had insisted on, one that was blind to race, gender, and passed HR complaints to prevent managerial bias, like Henderson's, had been used against her. Karen had gotten back in. Not just back in. She had been promoted. "You're flying passenger jets." Chloe said, her voice hollow. That's right, Karen sneered, a terrifying, triumphant smile spreading across her face. I'm Captain Foster. I fly the 737s out of this very hub, and today I'm flying the 305 to New York. Funny, isn't it? Linda Chen was stammering. This is a mistake. You can't be your criminal record. Sealed, Karen snapped. Plea deal. Misdemeanor. It's not a disqualifying offense for an ATP license. I passed the psych eval. I passed the sim check. I am untouchable. She stepped closer to Chloe. You took everything from me. My home, my career, my dignity. You tried to ruin me. But I'm better than you. I'm smarter than you. You're just a desk jockey with a badge. I'm the one with the real power. I'm the one in the cockpit. She leaned in her voice, dropping to a horrifying whisper. You may monitor the people, Karen hissed, but I control the plane. You think you grounded me? You just gave me a bigger set of wings. Now, if you'll excuse me, Dr. Davis, I have a flight to command. Enjoy the view from the ground. She brushed past Chloe, her shoulder deliberately knocking hers. Chloe stood in the hallway, her blood turned to ice. She watched Karen Foster stride down the hall, grab her flight bag, and head toward the crew exit, her back straight and arrogant. She hadn't just failed to get justice. She had, in her attempt to fix the system, inadvertently put the most dangerous, vindictive, and racist person she had ever met in command of a 180-seat passenger jet. This wasn't karma. This was a nightmare. Chloe stood frozen outside the elevator for a full 30 seconds. The VP, Linda Chen, was hyperventilating. Oh my God, Linda whispered. She's on the roster. She's Flight 1440 to LaGuardia. She's Chloe's mind, which had been stalled in shock, suddenly engaged. It became a steel trap. The fog of horror cleared, replaced by pure, cold logic. Get me a terminal map, Chloe ordered, her voice like ice. Which gate D22, Linda said, fumbling with her tablet. It boards in 20 minutes. No, it doesn't, Chloe said. She grabbed her phone. She didn't call the FAA regional office. She didn't call the DOJ. She called her personal contact at the National Transportation Safety Board. Tom, she said, her voice urgent. Chloe Davis, I have a right of command situation at DFW. I have credible first-hand evidence that the pilot in command for Transamerican 1440, Captain Karen Foster, is medically and psychologically unfit to fly. She just issued a direct threat. I am formally declaring her a clear and present danger to the aircraft and its passengers. There was a pause. How credible, Chloe? Firsthand, she explicitly stated, I control the plane. Her history. It's the LAX jet bridge incident. She's the one. She got rehired as a pilot. There was a string of curses from the other end. I'm on it. I'm grounding the plane now. I'm flagging her license for immediate emergency revocation. We'll pull her from the cockpit. No, Chloe said. A new terrifying idea forming. Don't. Not yet. Let her board. Let her get in the cockpit. I'm on my way to the gate. Chloe, what are you? That's too risky. Trust me, Chloe said she's not going to do anything yet. Her ego is too big. She wants to savor this, but I need to handle this publicly. She hung up and looked at Linda. Get me to gate D22 and get security, not airport police. I want Transamines' own chief of security. And I want a camera. Gate D22. The flight was almost fully boarded. Captain Karen Foster, in her crisp uniform, was standing just outside the cockpit supervising the boarding process, a smug, satisfied smirk on her face. She was scanning the crowd, and her eyes lit up as she saw Chloe Davis and Linda Chen approaching, flanked by two large men in dark suits, the airline's internal security. Well, well, Karen said, loud enough for the passengers to hear. Dr. Davis come to see me off. I'm touched. Captain Foster. Chloe said, her voice calm and professional. She stopped just in front of her. This is highly irregular, Karen said, her smirk widening. An FAA inspector on my jet bridge. Are you planning on shredding my documents this time? The crew, the gate agents, everyone was watching. No, Chloe said. I'm here for this. She held up her phone. She pressed play. A voice low and hissing filled the air. You took everything from me. You tried to ruin me. I'm the one with the real power. I'm the one in the cockpit. You may monitor the people, but I control the plane." It was Karen's voice from the hallway. Chloe had been recording the entire encounter. Karen's face, which had been a mask of triumph, collapsed. It was the third and final time Chloe Davis would see that look. The look of utter soul-destroying ruin. That's not. You recorded me without my consent," Karen shrieked. "Texas is a one-party consent state," Captain Chloe said. "And as a federal officer in the commission of my oversight, I am permitted to record all interactions with airline staff. You just provided the NTSB with a direct, credible threat. You stated you controlled the plane in an act of malice against me, a federal officer. You have on tape confirmed you are psychologically unstable and are using your command of a 30-ton-on aircraft to execute a personal vendetta." The passengers in the front row hearing this began to look terrified. One man immediately started to unbuckle. "You," Chloe said, her voice dropping, "are the very definition of unfit to fly." "Linda," Karen pleaded, turning to the VP. "She's twisting my words. I'm perfectly fine. I passed the psych eval. Your psych eval is now void," Chloe stated. She nodded to the two security chiefs. "Gentlemen," the two large men stepped forward. They didn't grab her. They stood at her sides. "Captain Karen Foster." The first one said, his voice a low rumble. "You are being relieved of command, effective immediately by order of the FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board." No, Karen screamed. "This was it. This was the final end. There was no coming back from this. You bitch," she shrieked at Chloe. "You set me up. You planned this. You planned this, Karen." Chloe said, "The moment you decided your hatred was more important than your job. You did this to yourself. I'll fly this plane. You can't stop me." In a last desperate and utterly insane move, Karen lunged for the cockpit to get to the door and lock it. But the security men were faster. They grabbed her arms. It was not gentle this time. They spun her around, restrained her, and zip-tied her wrists behind her back. "Take your hands off me. I am the captain," she screamed, thrashing. "You are a passenger," the guard said grimly, "and you are under arrest," as they dragged her, kicking and screaming, back up the jet bridge. The entire gate area was silent. Passengers filming on their phones. This video would be even more viral than the first. Chloe stepped into the cockpit where the first officer was sitting, white as a sheet. "Captain Foster has been relieved," Chloe said. "The NTSB is sending a replacement command crew. This flight is grounded." She turned and walked back into the terminal, past the gate, past the silent, staring passengers. The karma was at last complete. Karen Foster hadn't just lost her job or her backup job. She had been arrested in the cockpit. She would not face probation. She would face charges of terrorism for making a credible threat against an aircraft. She would lose her pilot's license, her flight attendant's license, her freedom, and her name. She would be synonymous forever with the most spectacular self-destruction in aviation history. Chloe got to a quiet part of the terminal and finally sat down, her hands shaking. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. True karma wasn't just losing your job. It wasn't just being humbled. True hard karma was getting exactly what you wanted, reaching the pinnacle of your revenge and having it all turned to ash in your mouth in front of the entire world. And just like that, Karen Foster's flight was permanently cancelled. She didn't just get fired. She was arrested on the flight deck and charged with crimes that would ensure she'd never be in a position of power again. She aimed for the sky and ended up in a federal prison. Chloe Davis continued her work, making the skies safer by proving that no one, not a flight attendant, not a manager, and not even a captain, is above the rules. This story is a powerful reminder. Be careful how you treat people. The person you're trying to step on might just be the one who owns the ground beneath your feet. What did you think of Karen's ultimate two-part downfall? Was that final twist in the cockpit the hardest karma you've ever heard? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love stories about extreme karma and vindictive villains getting exactly what they deserve, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and please subscribe to the channel. We have new stories coming every week, and you don't want to miss a single one.